Hello, my name is Ryan Madison. This is for William Woods, Class EDU 503, Sports Law. I did my first case study on Mogabgab versus the Orleans Public School Board. The facts of the case are such. In August of 1966, Robert Mogabgab was participating in wind sprints at the end of a football practice in August with his high school football team in Orleans Parish in New Orleans, which, if you know anything about New Orleans, in August, obviously very hot, very humid. He began to show signs of fatigue and eventually fell down. This was about 5:20. Afterwards, he had to be carried by fellow teammates to the bus, because there's a bus that takes them over back to the school. They practice at a different area. And many witnesses said he could not, under his own power, get on the bus. Back at the school around 5:40, he was laid on the floor on a blanket. He was pale, he was tired, he showed signs of exhaustion. He was later put in the shower and given ammonia capsules and was eventually put back on the blanket with a blanket over him, which turned out to be the wrong thing to do because he needed to lose heat, not gain heat, and the coaches did not know that. Only one of the coaches was present while these first aid measures were attempted, with the other coach staying in the office and having nothing to do with the care of the young man who had fallen at practice. Also, there were several witnesses that said there were first aid books that were just laying on the ground, so that they didn't really know for sure. They weren't trained properly in what to do in these situations, and so they had to get the information out of a first aid book. Robert's mother was also not notified, or either of the parents not notified, until 6:45 p.m., long after the situation had began. And other parents had come in who had a background in the medical field and said that they requested that the coaches call a doctor for Robert, but the coaches kept refusing. And with these heat illnesses, every minute that passes, the chances of the heat illness being reversed and the person bouncing back from it get lower and lower and lower. Unfortunately, at 2:30 a.m., Robert passed away. Arguments on both sides of the case. Well, one of the people to testify was Robert's doctor, who had said that in 2 previous physicals, Robert had been found in perfect health, that he did, however, have periodic increases in blood pressure and abnormal heart sounds, maybe a heart murmur. His doctor testified that really these 2 conditions are fairly normal and would not really necessarily lead to the young man having an issue. The coaches said that because the parents had contributory negligence by permitting their son to play when they were aware of these conditions. The parents argued, on the other hand, that the coaches failed to perform their required duty of preventing sickness and to provide prompt medical treatment. Also, they failed to notify the parents until way after the event had begun. The court findings were: the lower court found in favor of the defendants and dismissed the plaintiff's suit. However, on appeal, the plaintiffs proved the premise that Robert would more than likely have survived if he would have received prompt medical attention. So Robert's mother received $20,000, and his father received a payment of $21,634.75. Obviously, it would be a lot more today if this was 1966. So the penalties and things for these types of activities were much, much lower. The implications for athletic directors are many. First of all, athletic directors must ensure that their coaches are knowledgeable on heat illness and especially the signs and symptoms of heat illness. Maybe not in every single sport, because in some of the winter sports it's not a situation that comes up quite as much. But with baseball, with softball, especially with football, this is something that's becoming very, very common. And one of the leading causes of athletes passing away, unfortunately, are these heat illnesses. So as an AD, you have to make sure, I know most school districts do this anyway, but you have to make sure that your coaches are aware of the signs and symptoms and know what to do, how to treat a heat illness. And also, first and foremost, make sure they know that they need to contact and get medical attention and contact the parents immediately. Also, coaches should be up to date on any first aid techniques. And again, I know a lot of districts make you do this, but you have to make sure that the coaches know proper first aid and can take care of these kids. ADs should also make sure their coaches understand the 14 duties of negligence litigation. This, in our country is becoming more and more a country where people sue for almost anything, and coaches need to make sure that they're aware and are being safe with their livelihood, and want to make sure they're not going to get sued and have to spend an inordinate amount of money for making a mistake. But also the health of the kids is something that you want to always make sure is the first thing on our list. Our student athletes should be safe. In this case, there were several of these duties of the 14 duties of negligence litigation that were not met. The duty to plan, to supervise, to maintain safe playing conditions, to condition properly obviously wasn't, to provide emergency care without question wasn't provided, and to develop an emergency response plan. Have some kind of a protocol in place where if there is such an emergency, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and that obviously wasn't kept with here. And there are also 4 elements of negligence that a plaintiff must prove, and in this case, they were proven. Duty and breach together. Obviously, I just mentioned several duties that the coaches have, and they didn't meet very many of those. Or they didn't meet those ones that I listed above, and obviously those were breached because they didn't meet them. And then causation was proven by the premise that if Robert had received proper medical attention and quickly, he would more than likely have survived. And finally, there has to be proof of actual damage or loss, and in this case, unfortunately, there was with Robert passing away. This case just highlights the importance of coaches being properly educated in heat acclimation policies and first aid. And as an athletic director, it is your job or our job to ensure that those things are done and that our coaches are aware of these policies. Thank you.